Hey everyone, and welcome to the second part of this special battle recap episode. In the first part, we covered the battles with Brock, Misty, Gary on the SSN and Lieutenant Surge. We now know how it's possible that Oddish, or Gloom respectively, ended up at the top of the rankings and why Charmander, or Charmeleon respectively, has been defeated so often. The second part will be even richer in information, and here I will explain everything up to the battle with Sabrina, where this special episode will end, since both the battle with Sabrina and Koga already have full voice commentary. So there's no reason to drag out the introduction. Let's pick up right where we left off in the last episode. The battle with Giovanni in the Rocket Hideout in Celadon City was my first encounter with this bad boy. Half of my team had changed since the last fights. Clefairy and Graveler were released from the party because of their poor battle performances. Their spots were taken by Electrode, evolved from Voltorb, and Rhyhorn, who was supposed to replace Graveler as the new tank. Charmeleon finally evolved into Charizard, so I think the team was strengthened quite a lot. Poliwhirl opened the battle and took down Nidorino. After that, Murkrow came in and I kept Poliwhirl on the field just to get a free switch into Electrode. The debut of Electrode was a success. He simply used Charge Beam and one-shot Murkrow with ease. Then Giovanni's main Pokemon, Kangaskhan, entered the fight. I switched to Rhyhorn, another newcomer to the team, but he couldn't withstand Brick Break, which hit him really hard. At least he managed to set up Stealth Rock and chip Kangaskhan a little, but it wouldn't be the progression series without a silly mistake, and that was sending Electrode back into the battle. I brought him in only for self-destruct, thinking it would blow up Kangaskhan, but he survived it, so Electrode was wasted for nothing. Charizard then finished the job without any problem and burned Kangaskhan into ashes. He stayed against Nidorina as well and defeated her easily. With that, Charizard dramatically improved his personal record and moved up to 3rd place. 2nd place still belonged to Nidorino, while Gloom was still on the top, even though he didn't even appear in this match. Erika, the 4th gym leader in Celadon City, was my next target. My Gloom had finally evolved into Vileplume, but since Giovanni, that was the only change in my team. I opened the fight with Rhyhorn, naively thinking I could outspeed Erika's opener Bellossom, but she was much faster and defeated Rhyhorn with a single Giga Drain. I got nothing in return, only shame.
Let's get the bug spray!
Then followed a rather long and pointless passage with Nidorino against Bellossom, because he had nothing in his arsenal that could really hurt her. The agony ended with a series of switches, where both Erika and I tried to gain the upper hand by choosing the right Pokemon. The switch streak came to an end with Victreebel versus Charizard, and Charizard simply crushed Victreebel with a single flamethrower. I could have let Charizard burn through every Pokemon Erika sent out, but I wanted my other team members to get involved too. That would have been understandable. However, my switch to Poliwhirl against Tangela was another hard to explain blunder. 1 Giga Drain and Poliwhirl was down. Tangela was then avenged by Electrode, who destroyed her with Electro Ball. Next came some unpleasant moments against Bellossom, who turned out to be the strongest and most troublesome Pokemon on Erika's side. It was my freshly evolved Vileplume who finally sent Bellossom back to her Pokeball after a couple of rounds. Unfortunately, the exciting Vileplume vs Vileplume mirror match never happened, because mine was already badly injured and had to be switched out immediately. Vileplume was replaced by Nidorino, But even here he couldn't contribute much, as his moveset was generally weak against grass types. The battle was finished by Charizard's fly, earning him another victory. His performance against Erika pushed him up to second place in the rankings. Vileplume stayed at the top, Nidorino was third, and Electrode fourth. Rhyhorn and Poliwhirl, on the other hand, started to fall insignificantly behind the rest of the team. The next battle with Gary in Lavender Tower was so smooth and quick that I will just comment on it briefly. Nidorino had finally evolved into Nidoking, and his moveset had also improved. The fight against Gary lacked any tension because all of my Pokémon were at least 5 levels higher than his. My team simply crushed all of his Pokémon, mostly with one-hit KOs, so each of them scored an easy win and nobody went down. The rankings remained unchanged. On the contrary, when I encountered Gary in Silph, it was a completely different story. Although there was still a level gap between our Pokémon, his team was much stronger than the one in Lavender Tower. The battle was tough, even though my squad had undergone big evolutionary changes. Rhyhorn evolved into the powerful Rhydon, and Poliwhirl finally reached his final form Poliwrath. The match started under full control, with Rhydon setting up Stealth Rock and crushing poor Flareon with a one-hit KO. Things got complicated with the arrival of Blastoise. I sent in Vileplume, who should have been the perfect counter, but Blastoise hit back hard with Ice Beam, super effective against him. After a few minor switches, the fight continued with Charizard vs Exeggutor, and that's where the real problems began. I misread the situation, which led to a chain of unnecessary complications. First, I let myself get killed by the confusion from one Psybeam. Instead of healing and going for a Flamethrower, I switched to Nidoking, who was vulnerable to psychic moves. He missed his Mega Horn and was shredded by Psybeams. Then came another nonsense move from my side. I switched to Rhydon, who is obviously weak to grass, and basically sacrificed him just to heal Nidoking. And I completed a series of mistakes by sending Poliwrath against Exeggutor, only because I wanted to heal Charizard. Poliwrath went down, and I put myself under heavy pressure. Charizard eventually saved me, ending Exeggutor's streak with Fly. But honestly, I should have taken Exeggutor out with Charizard many turns earlier. It would have spared me the defeats of Rhydon and Poliwrath. In short, I really mismanaged this battle as a trainer. Gary then sent his badly wounded Blastoise, and I switched to Vileplume while Gary fully healed the Blastoise. As before, Vileplume couldn't finish Blastoise even with Giga Drain because Ice Beam was doing more damage in return. So I switched again into Charizard. The plan was for Charizard to beat Blastoise with Dragon Breath, but I underestimated Blastoise's defense. Charizard failed to finish him and was taken out by a single Aqua Tail. Blastoise was eventually dropped by Electrode, but at that point I only had Electrode, Vileplume and Nidoking left, while Gary still had his Alakazam, and I was seriously worried. I kept Electrode in against Alakazam, and that turned out to be the right call. Alakazam couldn't beat him with Psychic, while I nailed him with Thunderbolts. Outspeeding Alakazam was clutch this time. Once Alakazam fell, I felt relieved because I knew I couldn't lose anymore. Pidgeot was just a piece of cake for Nidoking. In the end, Electrode surprised me with his great performance, moving up to second place right behind Vileplume. Only one victory separating them. Charizard, despite having the most kills, dropped to third place because his number of defeats dragged him down. Nidoking took fourth place and was starting to prove more useful. Rhydon ended up in the fifth place, while Poliwrath fell all the way to the 6th and last place in the rankings. The match against Giovanni wasn't easy either, although I don't think I made as many mistakes as I did against Gary. Since the battles with Gary and Giovanni are almost back to back, there was only one change in my team. I released Vileplume and brought back my old friend Graveler, who in the meantime had evolved into Golem. This step was a bit forced, because I felt that Vileplume was starting to lag behind the rest of the team. In battles he didn't have a good moveset and his DPS was weak. You can leave a comment on this topic and say how you view the removal of Vileplume from my team, but I also reduced the number of Pokemon weak to psychic moves from 3 to 2. For the first time ever, I also shared the real IV numbers of my whole team, so you could see how strong each individual Pokemon is in the terms of genetics. In short, not a single Pokemon had a perfect combination of nature, IVs and ability. Just look at Golem with his 0 defense and 31 attack. To be honest, Golem was only one-time patch for my team, because I couldn't afford to duplicate rock ground type. That would make me extremely vulnerable to any water Pokemon, plus Charizard of course. So you can bet Golem was never meant to stay in the long term. As fate would have it, Poliwrath and Nidoqueen faced each other in the first round. But Poliwrath didn't deal much damage to Nidoqueen with Psychic, so after one attack I switched to Nidoking. The king showed his level and moveset superiority when he defeated her with Earth Power. The battle between Honchkrow and Raiden lacked any surprise, because Raiden just one-shot him with Rock Slide. The next Pokemon Giovanni sent out was Nidoking, and I was honestly looking forward to this, my king versus Giovanni's king, or in other words G-King. That could be a nice story battle. But to be honest, I knew my king was 6 levels higher, so the winner was basically decided in advance. My king beat G-King with ease. Then I faced Kangaskhan, or Kanga in other words, and despite Nidoking landing a poison jab, Kanga KO'd him with return. So it was time for Golem's big return to the stage. Kanga used Brick Break, but Golem withstood it without a problem. On the contrary, Golem destroyed Kanga with a mighty earthquake. Giovanni's last Pokemon was Rhyhorn, and I made another mistake by switching into Charizard. I thought I could finish him easily with Dragon Breath, but Rhyhorn, 7 levels below my Charizard, killed him with a single Rock Blast. I didn't expect that, but I deserved it for my naivety. Poliwrath finished the match with Bubble Beam, which Rhyhorn had no chance to withstand. Thanks to the double KO and the departure of Vileplume, the very top of the rankings changed for the first time since the start of my journey, with Nidoking taking the lead as the best one. Electrode was right behind him in second place, and Charizard, despite having the most kills, sat at third place. We finally made it to the end. Part 2 was even richer in information than the previous part, because we had to cover a couple of difficult battles. As I said in part 1, I hope I explained some of my steps and tactics and showed you my mistakes, which I don't recommend repeating, unless you do so at your own risk. Players coming from the original games can be really unpleasantly surprised by the strength of the AI bosses, just like it happened to me. So don't underestimate them, think about your switches and moves, prepare the necessary items, and be ready for tough battles. Nevertheless, you can leave a comment about how you liked these 2 special recap episodes and what you would have done differently in my battles. And of course, I'll be glad for any like or subscribe. From now on, all episodes will have a voice commentary, so I don't think another special battle recap will be necessary in the future. Thanks a lot for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next regular episode of the Progression series. Take care all, and see you next time.